The jungle was never silent, but tonight it felt like it was holding its breath. Corporal Alan Ward crouched beneath a curtain of tangled vines, his hands wrapped around a rifle slick with sweat and rain. The Japanese counterattack had hit their forward line at exactly 2:14. A rolling wave of shouts, grenades, and rifle flashes that tore apart the night like lightning ripping through the sky. Ward had been acting as a scout sniper on the left flank when the world collapsed into chaos. One moment he was tracking movement near the ridge. The next he was tumbling backward down a muddy slope, slipping between tree roots, banging his shoulder against a rock, losing his bearings, losing the voices of his squad, losing everything except the roar of gunfire somewhere above him. He called out once, twice, but the jungle swallowed his voice. The Japanese were sweeping the ridge. Staying quiet meant staying alive. So he went silent. Now he had been moving for hours, deeper into the trees, away from the gunfire, hoping to circle back toward friendly lines by dawn. But dawn never came. Gently on Bougainville, the sky shifted from black to a wet gray, and the jungle revealed its true face. Every leaf gleamed with moisture. Every shadow seemed to twitch. The air was thick enough to drink. He checked his ammo. 4 rounds left. 4. His belt pouch was gone, probably torn loose when he fell. He had the rifle, a knife, a canteen half filled with rainwater, and nothing else. The realization settled on him like the humidity. He was behind enemy lines, alone, with 4 bullets standing between him and whatever was hunting him, because something was hunting him. He wasn't sure when he first felt it. Maybe when he stopped to drink and noticed the faint impression of a boot in the soil. A Japanese boot. Fresh. Maybe when he heard a twig snap behind him and froze so hard his knees locked. Maybe when he caught that brief, impossible-to-mistake reflection in the brush, the glint of a lens, a sniper's glass. Someone had eyes on him, someone patient, someone good. Ward moved slowly, deliberately, never in a straight line, always doubling back, circling trees, crawling beneath fallen logs, changing elevation. Whoever was following him matched his movements. Not close, but close enough. The jungle echoed tiny clues, a distant rustle, too heavy for a bird, the faint click of metal, almost swallowed by rain, the strange silence of animals that avoided one particular direction. It wasn't a squad, it wasn't a patrol, it was one man, one sniper, and he was hunting Ward like Ward had hunted others. At noon, the rain came down harder, pounding the canopy so fiercely it sounded like machine gun fire. Ward used the noise to move uphill toward a narrow ridge that offered a view of the valley. If he could get height, maybe he could get eyes on whoever was tracking him. He crawled up the ridge on his stomach, pushing through mud so cold it felt like it grabbed at him, pulling him down. When he reached the crest, he froze. There was movement in the gully below, just a flicker, a branch shuddering, a shadow shifting. He lifted the rifle slowly, breath held, watching through the iron sights. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then he saw it. A gloved hand. Just a hand, reaching slowly through a tangle of roots, feeling for support. The rest of the man stayed hidden. A veteran move. A sniper's move. Ward kept his finger off the trigger. Too risky. Too little ammo. Too much uncertainty. He watched as the hand withdrew and the jungle swallowed the figure once more. Whoever the sniper was, he was tired. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost pained. Ward didn't know why, but he recognized the heaviness. And he realized something unsettling. This sniper wasn't moving with the confidence of a hunter. He was moving with the desperation of someone forced to keep going, someone hurting, someone starving, just like Ward. Ward backed off the ridge and moved east, sticking to the low ground, letting the rain hide his tracks. He drank the last of his canteen and refilled it with rainwater dripping from broad leaves. It tasted like mud, but kept him alive. His stomach churned with emptiness. He chewed on the root of a small vine, bitter, rubbery, barely edible, but it kept his jaw working, kept him from thinking too much. By late afternoon, he'd gone maybe 2 miles. The jungle didn't allow straight lines or fast progress. The mud sucked at his boots, the vines wrapped around his ankles, the trees pressed in from every side. And all the while, the presence behind him never disappeared. At dusk, he reached a clearing where a giant tree had fallen, tearing its roots upward like skeletal fingers. He almost stepped into the open before instinct yanked him backward. Something felt wrong. A weight in the air, a disturbance, a trap. He scanned the clearing through the iron sights. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but the sense of danger was unmistakable. He slid along the tree line, keeping his body low, circling the clearing until he found a shallow depression beneath exposed roots. He crawled under and lay on his stomach, mud soaking through his uniform, lungs heaving from the climb. He waited. The jungle dimmed, the shadows deepened, and then he heard it. Not a sound a normal soldier would make, not careless footsteps, not accidental noise. This was a single exhale, controlled, slow. A sniper preparing a shot. Ward held his breath. He didn't move. He didn't blink. For 10 seconds, the world narrowed to the space beneath those roots, the mud pressing into his face, and the faint, deadly stillness just beyond the clearing. Then a shot cracked. Not at him, somewhere to the right. A warning? A test? Or maybe the sniper firing at something else? Ward didn't know. He only knew one thing with certainty. This wasn't random. This wasn't instinct. This was personal. Whoever was hunting him wasn't just trying to kill him. He was studying him, learning him, mirroring him. Ward whispered to himself, barely audible, "You're not alone out here, and neither am I." Night swallowed the clearing. The hunt had only begun. The jungle didn't sleep. It only changed its breathing. At night it sounded alive, clicking, dripping, whispering, as if the trees themselves shifted to listen. And every sound pressed against his ears like a warning. He had survived the first night by pure, stubborn instinct, but by the time dawn clawed its way through the canopy, he realized something he didn't want to admit. The Japanese sniper wasn't just nearby. He was studying him. The American wiped mud from his face and watched how the morning light filtered through the vines. He checked the ground again. The footprints he'd seen weren't an illusion. They were fresh, light, deliberate, made by someone who knew exactly how to step without breaking too much foliage. A scout, a hunter, someone trained. He pressed his back against a tree trunk and took a slow breath, forcing his pulse to settle. The jungle made soldiers into ghosts, and ghosts into hunters. He had 4 bullets left, 4 chances, 4 prayers. He moved cautiously, crouched low, pushing aside leaves with fingertips instead of hands so they wouldn't snap back and give away direction. The smell of damp wood and rotting bark stuck to him. His uniform was stiff with dried mud. The humidity made his chest feel heavy, but he kept crawling forward, using roots as cover, counting seconds between movements. His mind replayed the attack that separated him from his unit. The Japanese had slipped through the darkness like shadows, firing flare after flare until the whole ridge glowed red. In that chaos he'd been knocked down, disoriented, and by the time he found his bearings, he was alone. Now, somewhere out there, the jungle ghost was watching him. The American paused near a fallen tree, listening. A bird cry echoed, then another, too repetitive, too even. Not a bird, a signal. His stomach tightened. Someone was marking distance. He slid behind a thick tangle of roots, eyes scanning. The world narrowed into shapes, shades, angles, any place a rifle barrel could hide. Minutes passed in silence. Then he noticed something off. A cluster of leaves halfway up a tree slightly bent the wrong direction, like weight had pressed on the branch earlier. A perch. A sniper's perch, but empty now. Whoever had been there moved at dawn, and moved quietly. He exhaled through his teeth. This wasn't random pursuit. This was a duel. And the enemy sniper wasn't rushing. He was testing him, observing, learning how he moved, what he reacted to, which direction he avoided. The psychological game had begun. The American continued deeper, knowing the longer he stayed in one place, the more predictable he became. His boots sank in the mud with quiet squelches. He hated the sound. Everything echoed in this cursed island. He reached a small clearing carved by an old bomb crater. Rainwater filled the basin. He knelt and cupped his hands, drinking slow gulps, even though the metallic aftertaste made his tongue curl. He needed the water. While drinking, he felt it. That crawling sensation on the back of his neck, the one every soldier learns to trust. He ducked. A second later, a bullet cracked through the clearing, slicing a leaf above him before burying itself in the mud. He threw himself sideways, rolling behind a log. The shot had come from far, maybe 80 yards, which meant the Japanese sniper wasn't trying to kill him with that bullet. That shot was a message. I know where you are. His heart pounded. He scanned the tree line, but the sniper was already gone. A ghost firing from mist. He gritted his teeth. He wasn't dealing with a panicked soldier. He was dealing with a patient one, a professional. He crawled away, staying low, moving in zigzags, using every log, rock, and root as a shield. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His muscles burned. Hours passed without another sound. The sniper didn't fire again. That silence felt worse. It meant the enemy was repositioning, closing angles, studying again. Midday heat turned the jungle into a steaming furnace. The American rested in the shade under a ridge, letting his lungs calm. That's when he spotted something half-buried near a tree. A small stretch of disturbed earth where leaves had been brushed over. A boot print. But not his. And not fresh. Maybe 12 hours old, deep heel, light toe. Someone had staggered, or limped, injured. That changed everything. The Japanese sniper wasn't the perfect ghost he imagined. He was wounded. Maybe during the counterattack, maybe from shrapnel, maybe starving too. The American's jaw tightened. A part of him felt relief? No, not relief, clarity. This wasn't a hunter hunting for glory. This was a man trying to survive the same hell. But the jungle didn't care. The duel continued. As afternoon dimmed into orange haze, he climbed a slope, brushing past long fronds. His mind calculated possible sniper nests. High ground? No. Too exposed. Fallen trees? Maybe. Hollow logs? Definitely possible. He spotted a ridge that gave view of the lower jungle. He crawled to the edge slowly, chin nearly in the dirt. His eyes scanned the landscape. Leaves, mist, movement. No, just a monkey leaping branches. Sweat beaded down his neck. Then he saw it, a faint flash of light far below him. Not metal, just the smallest reflection, like sunlight bouncing off glass. A scope. His breath caught. He froze. The sniper was positioned facing the lower trail, expecting him to move toward the river. Good. That gave him a window. He backed away silently, belly to the ground, and made a wide arc through thick brush, circling behind the ridge. Every step took every ounce of patience he had left. 40 minutes of crawling. Ants biting his wrists, thorns shredding his sleeves. But he didn't stop. Finally, he reached a position behind where he'd seen the reflection. He peered between roots and vines. There, nestled between two trees, was the sniper's hide. A crude shelter of leaves, a small dugout, a rifle resting on a log. But no sniper. The hide was empty. Unease hit him. He ducked instinctively, scanning around. Too quiet, too still. The hide wasn't abandoned. It was bait. The Japanese sniper knew he'd spot the glare. He'd done it on purpose. The American's pulse thundered. He turned slowly, every muscle tight. A twig snapped behind him. Not loud, just enough. Someone was 30 feet away, maybe less, moving closer, hunting. He raised his rifle, hands shaking. The jungle thickened around him, shadows swallowing shapes. This wasn't a duel anymore. It was a trap closing in. And he was running out of time, out of energy, out of bullets, out of luck. The second day in the jungle was ending, and the real ghost was finally stepping into the open, ready for the next move in their deadly chess match. Night didn't fall on the jungle so much as it bled into it, dripping through the canopy until the world turned into one endless dark shape. By the time the last thin stripe of daylight vanished, the American was pressed against the base of a huge breadfruit tree, sweating through his uniform, listening to his own heartbeat thump like distant artillery. The twig snap he'd heard still echoed in his mind. Someone had been close enough to touch. Maybe the Japanese sniper, maybe another soldier, but his gut said it was him. The same ghost who had fired the warning shot. The same ghost who left bait in the form of a decoy hide. The silence now felt tighter than any noose. The jungle was always loud at night. Insects buzzing, frogs croaking, leaves dripping rainwater. But tonight, it felt like everything was waiting, holding its breath with him. He gripped his rifle tighter, keeping his index finger just outside the trigger guard. He didn't want to fire blindly. He had 4 bullets left, and each one was a piece of his future. If he wasted even one, the jungle would swallow him whole. Sweat crawled down his spine, his thighs cramped from crouching. But he didn't move. Movement meant sound. Sound meant death. Slowly, very slowly, he lowered himself belly first onto the damp ground, inching behind the tree. The roots curved like ribs, forming a natural shield. He pressed his ear to the earth. Sometimes, if someone walked close, you could feel faint tremors before you heard footsteps. Nothing. Just the tiny scuttle of insects and the steady beat of his own fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was impossible inside this darkness. Then he smelled something faint on the thick, humid air. Something human. Sweat. Not his. Someone had been near recently. Very near. The American forced himself to breathe calmly. Fear sharpened everything to a point, but panic dulled it. He had to stay sharp. When his eyes adjusted enough, he slowly lifted his head, scanning the jungle for silhouettes, as if someone had rummaged through it in a hurry. Supplies stolen? Or someone desperate for food? The American slid forward on his elbows, keeping the tree between him and the pack. If the sniper wanted him to grab it, he wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. The jungle air thickened as a faint breeze crept through the leaves. The branches above him swayed gently. Then the wind vanished. and something else replaced it. A smell. Gun oil. Fresh. His pulse hammered. He pulled back behind the roots, forcing himself smaller. There was no doubt now. The sniper was close. Very close. The American clamped his jaw to stop his teeth from chattering. His face itched, his arms trembled from holding himself in place, but he dared not move. Minutes crawled by like wounded animals. Then, a shape moved, barely a whisper of motion, just a slight shift of darkness 5 feet away from the fern. The American froze. His breath caught halfway in his throat. The Japanese sniper had been lying prone in the shadows, waiting for him to go for the pack. The American felt a chill slice through his chest. The enemy wasn't just trained, he was starving, injured, and still thinking clearly enough to set layered traps. The ghost rose slowly from the ground, staying low, moving with a limp barely visible in the moonlight. He carried his rifle tucked against his chest. The American watched, barely daring to blink. The sniper reached the pack, crouched, and pulled something from it. A small can, maybe food. His hands shook slightly. Hunger. Real hunger. The American felt a strange tug in his chest, not pity, not sympathy, something more confusing. Recognition. They were both animals at this point, both starving, both hunted, both alone. The sniper tucked the item away, then turned his head suddenly, listening. The American didn't breathe. The sniper's face was barely visible through the leaves, narrow cheeks, stubble, sweat streaking down his jaw, eyes sharp even through exhaustion. He scanned the jungle like a man who had lived inside it for years. The American slowly moved his rifle, inch by inch, raising the barrel. He aligned the sights. His finger hovered above the trigger. 30 feet. A clean shot. But something inside him resisted. This man was limping, starving, scavenging from his own abandoned pack. The American's heartbeat pounded between indecision and instinct. Kill him now and end it. Or wait? Why wait? Why hesitate? Survival wasn't noble. It wasn't moral. It was simple math. You live, or the other guy does. But still, something held his finger back. The Japanese sniper straightened slowly and moved away from the pack, scanning again. He placed one hand on a nearby tree to support his weight. His breathing was labored. He was hurt worse than the American realized. The American cursed silently under his breath. He knew he couldn't stay here much longer. If the sniper circled again, he'd find the tree cover. And then the roles would flip. He had to move. But moving meant sound. And sound would give everything away. He thought quickly, eyes racing across the ground. To his right, a cluster of vines hung low, brushing the leaves below. He reached for a loose root, snapped it gently. The tiny crack echoed sharper than he expected. The sniper tensed instantly. The American threw the broken root across the ground toward the vines. It landed with a faint rustle. The sniper pivoted, rifle raised, limping toward the sound with sharp, predatory focus. That was the opening. The American slid out from behind the tree, crawling in the opposite direction, keeping low, keeping slow. His elbows dug into the mud, his ribs scraped roots, but he pushed forward. 10 feet, 20, 30. He didn't look back. He couldn't. The sniper would realize the trick soon. The American slipped into a cluster of tall grass, rolling onto his back just long enough to catch his breath. His chest burned, his arms ached, but he was alive, barely. The cat-and-mouse game had changed again. The sniper wasn't unstoppable. He was wounded, starving, human. But he was still out there, somewhere behind him, somewhere in the dark, and the jungle wasn't going to let either of them leave without a fight. And as the night deepened, the American understood one thing clearly. This wasn't a duel anymore. It was two dying men, circling each other like shadows, each step dragging them closer to the one ending neither of them wanted. But both were being forced toward. The third day was coming, and the jungle was far from done with them. Dawn on the third day didn't rise gently. It oozed into the jungle like smoke, turning everything into gray silhouettes and dripping light through shattered leaves. The American lay inside a dip in the ground, half covered by ferns, shivering despite the heat. His body felt hollow. His throat clawed for water. His head throbbed with every heartbeat. But he forced his eyes open. He had survived the night, barely. He didn't know how long he'd slept, or if he'd slept at all. The jungle noise had blended into one endless pulse. He dragged himself upright and wiped the mud from his rifle. 3 bullets now, he had checked twice. 1 lost during the night when he'd fallen. 3 rounds, 3 thin threads of life. He listened carefully. The forest was awake. Insects chirping, branches creaking, birds calling from the canopy. But it was the wrong kind of awake. Too uniform, too even. The Japanese sniper was awake too. Somewhere ahead, somewhere behind, he couldn't tell. The American crawled out of the grass, using the slope to shield his movement. His legs shook with every push. His stomach grumbled loudly, embarrassingly loud in the silence, and he clenched his jaw. He hadn't eaten in at least 2 days. Roots and rainwater weren't keeping him alive, just delaying the collapse. He trudged through the thick underbrush until he reached a narrow ravine cutting through the jungle. The steep walls on either side formed a natural funnel, good for hiding, bad for escaping. He stepped into it anyway. It was the fastest path back to the ridgeline. He would either find friendly patrols or die before getting there. Halfway through the ravine, a strange sound drifted down from above, a low groan. Human. Hurt. His heart jerked. He raised his rifle, crouching low, eyes scanning the cliff edges. The jungle muffled the direction, but he caught it again, a breath, strained, uneven. He pressed himself against the ravine wall, inching toward the sound. Mud slid beneath his boots, his pulse thudded in his ears. When he rounded a bend, he froze. A man lay collapsed beside a fallen log at the base of the slope. Thin frame, uniform in tatters, rifle beside him. The Japanese sniper. His face was pale beneath the grime. His shirt was soaked with dried blood around the ribs. A shrapnel wound, deep and ugly. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't hiding. He was dying. The American's grip tightened on his weapon. This was it. The end of the game. One pull of the trigger and the ghost haunting him for 3 days would vanish. Silence replaced by relief. Safety. Survival. The sniper lifted his head slightly as if sensing him. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening. They locked on each other. Neither moved. Neither blinked. The Japanese sniper didn't reach for his rifle, didn't raise a hand, didn't even tense. He just looked at the American with a strange expression. Not fear, not defiance. Recognition. The American held his gun steady, but his breath wavered. He expected a trap, a twitch, a trick. But instead the sniper shifted weakly, coughing. His voice came out rasped, barely a whisper, but clear enough in the still air. "Water." The American stiffened. His instinct screamed, "Don't go near him. End it. Walk away. Do something, anything except hesitate." But something in the sniper's voice, something raw and human, cut through the noise. They had been hunting each other like animals, but now both were barely standing, both starving, both broken. The American's rifle lowered a fraction. Not much, just enough to change the air between them. The sniper saw it, and slowly, painfully, he reached into his pocket, pulled something out, and placed it on the ground between them. A small cloth strip, a personal tag, a gesture of surrender, or simply a sign of acceptance. The American swallowed hard. His throat felt like sandpaper. He stepped forward cautiously, stopping several feet away. He unscrewed his canteen, his last bit of water, and tossed it gently. The sniper caught it with trembling hands and drank in small sips, each one seeming to pull him back from death just enough to breathe again. Then he set the canteen down and leaned back, chest rising and falling in shallow waves. "Why didn't you shoot me?" the American whispered before he could stop himself. The sniper blinked slowly. He tapped his injured side, then made a small gesture, a wave of the hand that meant pointless. He had been dying long before the duel reached this moment. The American looked down at the man who had spent days outsmarting him, haunting him, studying him. Not a ghost, not a monster, not a legend, just another soldier in a war too big, thrown into a jungle too cruel. He finally understood why the sniper never took a kill shot. He wasn't hunting for victory. He had been trying to stay alive long enough to find water, food, anything. The duel had been a misinterpretation, both men reacting out of fear, instinct, desperation. The American lowered his rifle completely. The sniper breathed out softly, almost in relief. A long silence settled between them, broken only by the distant sound of parrots and dripping leaves. Then the sniper motioned weakly toward the ridgeline, pointing with 2 fingers. A direction, a warning. The American stared. "You want me to go?" The sniper nodded faintly. There was no malice, no threat, just simple understanding. One of them could still survive. The American hesitated, then reached into his own pack, what little remained of it, and tore off a piece of cloth, leaving it next to the sniper's tag. Not a truce, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. One ghost to another. He stepped back slowly, eyes never leaving the wounded man until distance swallowed him behind trees. He made his way toward the ridgeline, pushing through branches with renewed urgency. Every step shook his legs, every breath felt shorter, but he kept moving. For the first time in days, he wasn't being followed. He wasn't being hunted. The jungle felt different, lighter, almost merciful. Several hours later, he spotted movement through the trees, helmets, boots, the faint glint of metal. American patrol. He nearly collapsed walking toward them. They rushed forward, catching him before he hit the ground. Voices blurred, hands grabbed his shoulders, water touched his lips. Someone said his name. He barely heard any of it. His mind drifted back to the sniper lying in the ravine, fading under the trees. A man he never knew, but would never forget. A man who, in the end, didn't fire the final shot even when fear ruled everything. As they carried him away, the American thought one final truth. In that jungle, there were no heroes or villains, no victors, no conquerors. Only 2 dying men who crossed paths in the darkness, each trying to hold on to the last thin thread of life. And one of them, the ghost of Bougainville, would remain in that jungle forever, unseen, unburied, but remembered by the only witness he had left.